What are the steps in the comic hero's journey?
Yeah, there are 7 steps. I recently read a paper that referenced the comic hero's journey, and they talked about how I shoehorned the 12 steps of the hero's journey into seven steps of the comic hero's journey. And I did that, just because, save space, make it a little bit more economical.
Can I see the cover of your book? Steve?
So
It's a
the
beautiful
hero's
cover.
journey, we have the normal world, which we talked about, and WTF, that's the comic premise. And then you have reaction. In reaction, you have your character in this transformed state or this transformed circumstance, but they don't want to be there. It's Dorothy wanting to go home. It's Phil Connors in Groundhog Day trying to figure out, how do I get out of this? So there's first denial, and then the reaction is, okay, this is happening. How do I not make it happen? How do I go back? How do I fix this? And in some cases, it's unfixable. Like in Big, he goes to sleep as a 13-year-old boy. He wakes up, he's a 30-year-old man. But it doesn't need to be an impossible. It could be improbable. In Enough Said, film with Julia Louis-Dreyfus and the late, great James Gandolfini, Julia Louis-Dreyfus is a massage therapist. And she finds out that her new boyfriend is the ex-husband of her new best friend, both of who she now is giving massages to. So when she gives massages to her new best friend, who tells terrible things about her ex-husband, she then reacts to it when she's on a date with James Gandolfini, who's the ex-husband. And so as she's trying to figure out what to do about it, she's carrying on a mild deception. She's simply not telling either one about the other. But in the beginning, she's trying to make believe like this is not an impossible situation to be in. And of course, in that movie, when it blows up, it destroys her relationship, which is what happens in a movie at the all is lost moment. But you have the reaction, then you have connections. In connections, your characters are forming a nucleus around themselves, a family, friends that they hadn't had before. And what you have in that section is things are starting to slow down. You have characters who up till then had not even had a conversation with each other, and now they're kind of opening up to each other. In some comedies, the opening up is a little bit ridiculous, but in many comedies, it's where the characters, for the first time, are relating to other characters in a way that they hadn't before. One of the things I want to talk about in terms of these 7 steps is they don't have to happen all in the same order. They don't have to happen all at the same page. This page, this has to happen. Because they all happen in different ways. In 40-Year-Old Virgin, the connections start pretty soon after the truth about his being a virgin comes out. He goes to work, they make fun of him, he runs away. And Paul Rudd, because Paul Rudd is a nice guy. He's the guy who's all emo and he's still yearning after his girlfriend. He runs after him and he chases him down. He doesn't have to. If Paul Rudd doesn't chase him down, there's no movie. That's the end of the movie. That Steve Carell has quit. But he chases him down and they go and they have a cup of coffee together, and it's the first time that they're talking to each other. And Steve Carell even says, this is the first time we've had a conversation of more than 2 minutes. And connections is where your character, who up till that point had been a loner, or either through choice or through their own circumstances, and they begin to gather a group around themselves, a group that can become their friends. I mean, in Bridesmaids, she literally has a group of bridesmaids that first she's very antagonistic to, Or she gives them all food poisoning because she's trying too hard. But at the end, they have all bonded. So that's what happens in Connections. And in Connections, you slow the pace down so that people can have real conversations. One of the things that Monty Python discovered when they did their first movie, and now for something completely different, which was a compilation of sketches that they had done on TV. And they did this movie for the American market because at that time, Monty Python was still not being shown in America. And they did a test screening. And they found out in the test screening, it went great for the first 45 minutes. People were laughing hysterically. And then they just stopped for the next 45 minutes. And the Pythons kind of looked at each other and thought, well, maybe we have this in the wrong order. So they reshuffled some of the sketches and they did another screening. And again, for the first 45 minutes, people were peeing in their pants. And then it stopped. Because you just cannot make an audience laugh for 90 minutes nonstop without giving them something to chew on, without giving them some protein. And that's why for their next two movies, especially A Life of Brian, they gave you characters you could care about and characters who are going through a trauma and trying to find their way out of it. So even though the Pythons were very sketch-based, and even though Life of Brian is still a series of sketches, it was still telling a story about a guy that you identified with and empathized with. So that's why it's so important at some point in your movie to slow down, to reveal themselves. It's what Michael Haig calls the getting naked, which in a romantic comedy doesn't necessarily mean the people are having sex. It means that's the moment where in Hitch, Will Smith is revealing to the girl why he's become the love doctor, because he was not the love doctor in college. In fact, he was exactly the opposite. And so this is his reaction to that. After Connections comes New Directions. This is where the discovered gold really kicks in. In New Directions, your character has become somewhat accustomed to the impossible or improbable situation. And what has happened is new skills have arrived. Not because your character sat back and thought, I want to improve myself, but because they've had to. They're forced to transform. And so in New Directions, your character literally tries to go for something, the discovered goal, go for something that they hadn't even thought of at the beginning of the movie. In the beginning of the movie, is Steve Carell in 40-Year-Old Virgin, is he thinking about having a relationship with a woman? No. It's not even on the horizon. In the beginning of the movie, does Phil Connors want to have a relationship, pursue a relationship without sex with Rita? No. At first he tries to get her to go to bed with him, but he's unsuccessful because she's not that kind of a girl to go to bed with a guy, in the first day. And so he gets to a point where he just wants to be in her company and spends as much time with her as he can in her company because he's fallen in love with her and he can't figure out a way to get out of the time loop. So he just becomes the best boyfriend in the world. Somebody who's not grasping for something, not having some ulterior motive, just there for other people. Danny Rubin's a Buddhist. So is Harold Ramis, for that fact. And so the Buddhist philosophy infuses the Groundhog Day because the whole point is they answered the question, how can you be a good person in the world? And the answer is to be of service to other people. So then you have the lost night of the soul, the dark night of the soul, in which the all is lost sequence. Now, in a romantic comedy, this is often when the lovers break apart. which happens, kind of 2/3 to 3/4 of the way through. But even in a film as ridiculous and as offensive as Tropic Thunder, there's a breakup. The platoon literally breaks up from Ben Stiller and the rest of the actors in the make-believe platoon, and that happens about 50% of the way through the movie. So all these stations of the cross occur. They just don't occur all at the same place, all at the same time, and the progression can alter based upon the need of the story. The last section is race to the finish. Again, in many romantic comedies, you have a character literally racing to his loved one. In When Harry Met Sally, Billy Crystal is racing through the streets to get to the New Year's Eve party to express, however ineptly, his love to Meg Ryan. But even in Enough Said, your character needs to take some positive action. I've read several scripts where at the end, the good thing happens to the character, happens to the protagonist. The protagonist does nothing to accomplish that. That's probably a mistake. I know that's a mistake because your character has to take positive action to accomplish what they need to accomplish, to get what they need to get, and to resolve not just the narrative, but also the theme. In Enough Said, she's broken up, Julia Louis-Dreyfus is broken up with James Gandolfini, and it's broken her heart. She broke up with him because the deception that her new best friend was his ex-wife, and she was nagging about him about his weight because that's what his wife was filling Julia Louis-Dreyfus's head with during their massage therapy sessions. So he breaks up with her for deception. So every now and then she drives past his house and just parks. Just looks out the window. That's all she does, just drive and park. And one day he comes out, he sits on the stoop, and she looks at him and he looks at her and he kind of goes, "Come on." So the important elements of Race to the Finish. You don't have to show us a happy ending, but you have to hint at the promise of a better world. You don't have to have the lovers come together, but we have to know that it's going to be okay. In The Breakup, which is this kind of revolutionary, unsuccessful rom-com with Vince Vaughn and, she's the girl from Friends.
Courtney Cox?
No, the other one.
Oh, Kudrow. Lisa Kudrow?
No, the other one.
Jennifer Aniston. Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah, Jennifer.
Tell her what you've won.
In The Breakup, which is this kind of revolutionary, unsuccessful comedy with Vince Vaughn and Jennifer Aniston, they have this big fight. They break up. There's all this deception happening. And then Vince Vaughn does the speech. You know the speech? It's the speech that melts the heart of the magical object of desire. It's the speech that makes the person go, "You had me at hello." But what was interesting but unsuccessful about the film is that he does the speech. Everybody in the audience is prepared for her to go, "Oh, Vince Vaughn," and she goes, "No, not having it. Too late." Oh my God, they've really broken up. The film's called The Breakup. We should have figured that out. So they had a final scene in which they meet at a fair somewhere in Chicago. And Vince Vaughn has a new date that looks exactly like Jennifer Aniston. And Jennifer Aniston has a new date that looks exactly like Vince Vaughn. And there's this uncomfortable dialogue, and then they part. And it tested terribly because even though it was a cute joke, it left us feeling horrible about spending 2 hours in this we've had our own breakups. We don't want to have to live through it again. So did they get the couple together? No. All they did, using the same exact dialogue, was they kind of meet each other on a street in Chicago, and one of them's holding a bag of groceries. And they have the same exact dialogue. They didn't change a word, only this time it was, you felt that they were okay. They had this relationship, it broke up. They're okay, and they might not be friends, but they're okay. And it was a much, much better ending to the film because you need to give us if not the happy ending. You don't need to give us a happy ending. It can be an indie film, but you need to give us the promise of a better world. The other important thing about Race to the Finish is that you're not finished when the lovers kiss. That's not the end of the film. That's not the end of the story. You need to finish the theme. You need to complete the theme. What's the question you are asking? Well, what's the answer? You have to make the theme complete before the film is complete, before the narrative's complete, as opposed to just ending the story. So those are the 7 steps, which I've shoehorned. I've shoehorned the 12 steps from the hero's journey shoehorned them into the comic hero's journey, which, by the way, oh, look at there. Look, it's the comic hero's journey, fans.